getting right personnel. So I'm one of those people, and people may recognize my name, glue sticks with you, but I've been writing letters in the paper and attending meetings because I feel not that we don't want to support. I absolutely, and I think many people like me, really feel we've got to step up and support fire and rescue more, and we will because of the personnel issues. But what I would like to see is a real study, a comprehensive study that looks at facilities, buildings, equipment, staff, organizational structure, and how we build a centralized, not just service, but a culture that is unified, that the whole town can participate in. So, for that reason, having said that, I am not against spending money, absolutely not. Quite to the contrary, I am just looking for a complete evaluation of the situation like we did in 2008. Maybe use that same resource. They're a very well-recognized company internationally, and when I have that information, I can vote. But until I don't, I'm going to vote no. Not because I don't support our fire and rescue, I absolutely do, but I want to see the proper study done with a complete plan, including all aspects of the town's departments. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ruth Smith, and I just have a question, and it's not nearly as organized as everyone else's, but I know how fast people got to my house from the fire station. I live way out on Basin Point, so I feel like
my understanding, the town
To utilities, I wanted to point that out.
Hi, Dave Mercier, Fire Chief Harpswell, Fire Rescue. To answer the question on response time to Basin Point area, for example, if you looked at the 2008 study, you'd find that the average response time with volunteer fire department responses throughout town to any particular location is approximately 13 to 14 minutes. A truck responding from a central location, such as a mountain road, for example, could reach the Basin Point area in 9 minutes. It almost has,
It's no longer
when you eliminate the time it takes to leave your home, clean the snow off your truck, clean the windshield, get to the station and leave, when you can leave directly from a building into a truck ready to go, we've eliminated almost that response time. This building location is really about response time. It's our ability to get to your home quicker. Some of my best response times, for example, out of Harpswell Neck, I had a reported kitchen fire at the Auburn Colony. If anybody's familiar with the Auburn Colony, I have on Harpswell Neck. And my best response time for that in the summer, in the evening, was 9 minutes from the time of the call till we had a truck on scene. And that's a very short distance from the station. So a central location is not going to extend your response time. In fact, it's going to reduce it by almost half. Thank you.
I'd like to talk to the volunteer issue because people are concerned that the volunteers will sort of disappear if there's a central station. And what we have here is the central station is part of the plan for coverage of the entire town. The volunteers are, as you know, are dedicated and will want to do our thing and will continue and are very, very much needed. But currently, the volunteer pool that we keep talking to about we get more volunteers, look around this room, think about the town meeting when the age of everybody that came to the town meeting, and that's the volunteer pool, okay? The younger people who live here, in today's world, both parents work, most of the time they work outside of the town, so it isn't like somebody can drop what they're doing and respond. So we don't, for the most part, those folks can't afford the time and the real involvement to get qualified to become a volunteer. And all of us who volunteer at HI and all these kinds of things, you're not going to get interior firefighters from anybody in this room, including myself. Okay? You need 4 interior firefighters before any firefighter can enter a burning building. Okay? What we've done in this town is there are no certified paramedics, I don't believe this is true, no certified paramedic volunteers at this point. And what happened was the town then went to the hospital and contracted, so there is that dedicated paramedic at Mountain Road. Okay? So, and now we added 5-day coverage for paid firefighters, and now we added to 7 days. And as you can see where this is going, part of that plan to comprehensively cover everything is that new fire station. And the other thing is that you got to understand that there are 3 independent, not-for-profit organizations that make up the fire department. Okay? This is not a municipal fire department. The town buys the equipment, but each individual fire department has to raise the funds to run itself. The town makes a contribution for sure, but the basic expenses of running all of that comes from philanthropy and whatever else we can come up with. But the personnel situation is not going to get any better, and I think any reasonable person will agree to that. And the new fire station is an answer to that, because as this progresses, we're going to wind up having to have more and more paid folks.
I just want to make one more comment that I had forgotten. So, I don't know why I just started to do that. We do have 3 bays shown right now, but we have planned for a 4th bay. So, if you'll notice, so we have a little mezzanine, right, that's over all these little end rooms here. So that'll be a 22-foot high apparatus bay. Those will be like 8 foot high. There's a storage mezzanine above. We put it on this side, so in the future, you can add a 4th bay. So, and also being a pre-engineered structure, that would be one of the easiest type of structures to add a 4th bay. So it's a small thing, but it is, we did plan for some growth in the station. I just wanted to point out. Thanks.
All right, any more discussion on this item? One last chance before we move on. All right, at this point, we'll close the hearing on the central station and we'll move to the administration building in Richfield. Thanks, Andy.
On my next town meeting.
All right, who wants to lead this discussion off? No, out there somewhere.
Good morning, John Miskill, new chair of the Mitchell Fields Committee and the Mitchell Fields Steward. So the question that will be on the ballot is the demolition of the admin building. I'll do a piece of housekeeping here that I just heard. This is the title of the building that was the administration building at Mitchell Field. It does not involve the movement of the town offices. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. So in the picture that you see there straight ahead, it is the brick building with the garages on the left side that are directly in front of the causeway. Yesterday, we had a wharf permit review for the causeway boat launch, and everything is pretty much on track to put the RFP out here in the end of the month or shortly thereafter, to have a contractor in place by the end of the summer to do the in-water work as required by state law during the November to January timeframe, and have a boat launch on the north side as depicted there in spring of 2026. If you'd like to see a picture of it, we have a board on the side wall over here, and you can take a look at that. You see a red arrow on the left of the building that points up the hill. That is the service road that was put in when we took the old pier out, and that would be the way that boat launch traffic accesses the boat launch without interfering with the beach traffic, which would be where you see the big yellow arrow. The Mitchell Field Committee took a hard look at this, and we have proposed to demolish the building. The reason we want to do that is threefold. First, everybody wants it down. When you talk to people who use the field all the time, it gives us more open space. The demolition plan calls for taking the building down to slab, which would mean that the concrete base slab would still be there. But it gives us the open space, more picnic tables, more open views, more opportunities for family reunions and picnics and all the normal things that we do there. Gives us more room. Number two, the reason we want it down is where you see the white garage doors, sort of right at the head of the causeway. If we take that building down, that is paved on both sides of that garage, and it would allow us to develop a circular traffic pattern coming behind the building and driving through the garage area and back up that frontage road, so that the beachgoer traffic that the kayakers, the people that are offloading the scuba gear, the day campers, we have a separate traffic pattern from the boat launch traffic. Paul Plummer has indicated that this boat launch will get busy because it comes with parking. Parking for the boat launch trailers will be the concrete pad that's up above the bandstand. The third reason to take the building down is we don't know what all the impacts of having a boat launch and beachgoers are yet. We know we need bathrooms, but we can still have a small bathroom set and possibly a small office if we need somebody to manage the boat launch. We don't know what we need, but if we take this building down, it gives us the opportunity in the future to respond to those changes and do whatever we need to do. Now, there's been an alternate proposal to rehab part of the building. That's an indoor recreation and event center. Those are nice ideas. We just don't feel that they should be right at the waterfront. There's no additional parking. I don't know how you would have an event center or recreation, because the parking area that's immediately behind that building is used by beachgoers and day hikers and everybody else. So if we don't have any additional parking, opening that building to do something doesn't improve the traffic flow or anything else. So that's where we are. And, those are good ideas for what to do with the building, but, let's take a holistic look. We have a group that's taking a holistic look at the field, and there might be a better place to do that, where they would have plenty of parking, plenty of handicap parking. That's why the gazebo is where it is, because we can have special events there, and they don't impact people who just want to come to the waterfront. I'm available to answer questions. Anytime somebody wants to come to the field and talk about all this, I'm around. Thank you.
Ellen Blue, Mountain Road, Great Island. I think the developments at Mitchell Field overall are wonderful. It's great to see that we're doing a launch and that Mitchell Field is getting used more and more. I've been in town now full-time, but part-time, and then now full-time 5 years, but I've been here for over 20 years. So I'm very excited about all that. I just want to address process here. So I tend to be a building reuse person. I was a trade show organizer of a show, nationwide, international show, actually called Restoration and Renovation. So we dealt with rehabbing buildings and repurposing and reusing. So that part of my background tends to say, hey, wait, whoa, yeah, the building's ugly. Can you put lipstick on the pig? Can we make it look better? Can we repurpose it for other uses? I think a rec center is a great idea. I also think, looking at our aging population, and one of them, a senior center, using it as a senior center might be a good use. I just applaud the group that is hoping to get a chance before the building gets demolished to look at uses of it and how to fund it as a nonprofit. I'm also a volunteer for the Anchor, so I'm very tied into that. And not that a newspaper is a building, two completely different things, but the paper has actually proven you can do a nonprofit and you can run it efficiently as a business and make it pay for itself. I have to believe that that might be possible here, especially I know a couple of people that are behind that effort. They're very intelligent, very farsighted, very careful, are thoughtful. So I just want to say I personally will be voting no to demolish the building because I want to have time to let that group show what it wants to do. And I understand there are challenges if the building stays and with the launch and everything that the previous speaker said. I understand that. But I just want to have time to look at all those issues and see what this committee comes up with. So I'm voting not to demolish the building right now. Thank you.
Nobody on the committee has a problem with the proposals for the use of the building. The problem is there is no additional parking. And if you come down there in the summer, that parking lot's full. People are going to the beach, they're day hiking. So if you open the building and you want to have a big event center there, where are they going to park? That's the issue, the central issue.
I want to jump in just for a second. I'm Philip Connor, and I've been on the Mitchell Field Committee, I live on the neck. The parking keeps being mentioned by the Mitchell Field Committee as being an issue. We formed a subcommittee on the Mitchell Field Committee, and we found lots of areas for parking that can be put in around the field. We found, we identified 3 or 4 areas where we could probably put 50 cars each, and it's there. We got 116 acres or whatever it is, and a lot of it is suitable for parking. So parking is not an issue, and we can get better parking than having to go all the way up to the concrete pad. But parking is not an issue.
I am Lily out from Harpswell Neck, and I think actually there's a couple issues here. One is the big picture issue, and the second is the money issue. I think Bob will be addressing the money issue in a minute. But the big picture issue is that the town has owned Mitchell Field for 25 years, right? And there have been a number of studies, starting with 2003, 2004, 2005 master plan. All of them have said, let's see about that building there. We need bathrooms. We need nice bathrooms. That's been a thing from the beginning. In 2004, the selectmen had a warrant article about tearing all the buildings on Mitchell Field down for $40,000. But it was defeated at town meeting because people wanted to see what could happen with that building. Now, we're 20 years later, and we're kind of in the same place. But if you look at Mitchell Field and you look at the 2 big successes there, I think everyone loves the concerts in the summer. They've been a huge hit. Everyone loves the community garden. That garden has fed more people in Harpswell than most other towns can claim. It's pretty wonderful. And those were private-public partnerships that worked. And so all our little group is trying to do is say, since the first step in this whole process is to remediate the administration building, and since that is going to take, the estimates are, the shortest estimate is 1 year, the several more estimates are up to 2 years, because there's grant funding, and we've all talked about what grant funding is like. That is nothing can happen at all. Can it be taken down? Can it be reconstructed? Until that remediation is completed and certified. So our group had hoped to have that year to do some serious fundraising, because we all know, as we were talking about for the fire station, right now fundraising is in flux like crazy everywhere throughout the country, not just here. But it would have given us a year to sort of refine the plans. We know not only bathrooms are needed, but we know a lot of the private organizations in Harpswell need a larger meeting space than we currently have in town. The Harpswell Asian at Home lunches, for example, are exceeding 100 people, and we don't have an indoor space that can hold 100 people seated. So we wanted that year, but unfortunately that didn't happen, and the selectmen voted to be the ballot issue is remediate and tear it down, that's it. So we would have loved to have had that year. So unfortunately, I hate to say that we're going to vote no on this, because we all want to see something happen there. But if the only choice is tear it down or not, that's going to be the choice that we make. But I think the other bigger issue is the money issue. So he just happens to be in line.
Hello, Bob Goodrow, Great Island. First of all, my involvement on the administration building, saving it, is personal from the standpoint that we've had at least multiple reports saying that 50% of the users would like to see the building saved or reused. So whether it's the Mitchell Field Committee report that states that, or it's the MCOG report that says that, 50%. So I'm here as a voter saying, listen to our voters. It doesn't need to come down. I would like to see the building reused, and I think it has principle and purpose. the issue of parking seems to be just nonsense to me when proper planning is part of any end game, and we've got a boat launch that you can park almost a quarter mile away. Doesn't make sense. You look at any other state boat ramp, the parking or trailer parking is right beside it. That's not been planned, that's not my fault. The issue is, waterfront is the user, why not have an accessory building use that complements that than to put hurdles in our way? It's an opportunity for this town to come together. And I believe the numbers that I wish to speak to that Lily indicates is, I've done most of the estimating on what the cost would be to renovate the project. Since I asked the town at our previous meeting what the actual demolition cost would be, and nobody has responded to that, I actually went out to find a number from a local contractor, actually local greater than Harpswell contractors. And I've got a fair number that came back at $137,000 to take the building down. So it's not $80,000, it's $137,000, and that is only if it's remediated first. So let's be careful. If it's not remediated, the demolition material has to go to Bangor as the only licensed lead-based facility in the state at this time. So there's probably an additional $20,000 of trucking on top of the 137. So there is 157 versus the 80,000 in the environmental report warrant numbers. So I've got numbers that are real. I've got facts. The environmental report was kind of biased, and I want to make sure that we're voting on a fair and equitable project because that's what our community has asked us to do. So let's make it fair and say no so that we have an opportunity to put the unclogged planning process so that we can move forward to remediate and then eventually renovate this building. Thank you for your time.
Lowe's Price on the neck, and I'm also in the Mitchell Field Committee. As all of you know, we have worked on this for years, and we finally got to the point where we're ready to do something with the boat launch and everything else that's associated with that, including fixing up that donut, as we call it, past the bandstand for boat trailer parking. And let me just address parking for a minute. I've had occasion a number of times in the last few years to drive from North Wyndham to Standish on Route 35, right along the southern edge of Sebago Lake. There's a very nice boat launch set up at the southwest corner of Sebago Lake with limited boat trailer parking. And if you drive down Route 35 on the weekend in the summer when it's nice weather, boats and trailers are lined up all along the north side of Route 35, and I'm going to estimate maybe going back a quarter of a mile, because there's no room in that boat launch, as nice as it is, for parking. We can accommodate that easily. But the real issue we have is with the location of the building, the admin building itself. And when the admin building group, as we call them, met with Mitchell Field to discuss this, they emphasized compromise. And I personally like the idea of some kind of a venue there for public use. I don't think that it should be at the waterfront because, as Don said, it complicates everything we can do down there. Disregarding the parking itself, if the road has to get closed off, then going to the beach aren't going to have access, and the proposed idea that they have for the stage extending to the water from the front of the garage, which would become an indoor pavilion, really, again, compromises the situation and the area that we have to use. I am very much in favor of a pavilion. In fact, one of our former members proposed a pavilion along the lines of what they have down at Salisbury Beach. Maybe they're not going to line the one over at Rock Road in Westbrook, and also the one down at Thompson's Point. Maybe even put a smaller version of the pavilion right at Marion Beecher Snow School. But I don't think it should be at the water. I think if we had an open air pavilion have shelter from rain and sun, and put it up possibly between the bandstand and the parking area for the boats and trailers, where I think there's enough room for a reasonably sized pavilion. It would get a lot of use. Another issue everybody's brought up is bathrooms, or at least toilets. And I think we could very easily accommodate that, and should, perhaps with the composting toilets that don't require a water supply or a septic system. And there's a composting toilet set up at the rest stop on Route 95, just in Massachusetts. I think it's in Salisbury, just across the state line from New Hampshire. And I have stopped there a number of times over the years, and I've always been impressed with those toilets. They've been operating for I don't know how many years. I'm in Maine for 50. And they don't have any odor, and there's no water requirement. So I think there are ways to deal with that, give people a toilet down at the beach area where everybody seems to want it, and we can also have the performance setup that the admin group has proposed, but just not at the water. And we take the building down, it opens up the entire vista, the location for the waterfront activities, which are a significant part of what happens at Mitchell every day in the summer. I'm definitely going to vote for yes. It's time to get this thing done with and move on. Waiting another year for further study and fundraising is iffy. They've already had 6 months or more to work on that, and still don't have any firm commitments in writing to fund this thing. Maybe it's available, maybe it's not, but I think the building is that white elephant, as they say, and needs to go. Thank you.
Sue Hawks, Condisabo. I need a clarification for disclosure of a fishing family. Is that building going to be in the way for boats launching? And is there going to be a limitation on the size of the boats that can be launched from that? And I'm thinking of lobster boats for the fishermen. Do we have any answers for that, maybe? Oh, thank you.
So you can look at the diagrams on the side. The boat launch traffic will, as I said, will use the old service road that's been closed off that will go through the lower meadow. And where you see that angular red arrow coming down off the hillside, that's the path they will follow and then go out onto the causeway. The boat launch is 20 feet wide. It is listed as all tide. I don't know that that means all draft at low tide, but I think yesterday they indicated that the concrete ramp will at least project down into the water for about 5 feet at low tide.
Don, I understand that you had at least one boat hauler come down and help you with the design to make sure that the turning radius was there to allow them to launch some of the larger lobster boats in town.
That is correct. There was a discussion about the turn radius. When you look at the diagram, which we have over there, it shows you the boat launch. There is a turnaround out on the causeway to get you get set up and back down. And they had Billy Saxon come out and look at the diagram and everything, and they actually modified the design to widen the turnaround radius to be able to accommodate their delivery vehicles to put boats in the water. And we had to be careful about doing that because if we altered the design too much, it would have negated the permits that we already had for NERPA and Army Corps, but they were able to make that expansion without disturbing the permits.
I'm Dave Zamorowski, I live on the neck. First, I'd like to thank Don, and to a lesser extent, the rest of the committee of which I am a member. Don has put years of what I call MISCO labor into this. He has spent endless hours working with people who do the work, making sure that people like the commercial haulers came down and gave them their input so that they could launch their boats. It's just been an outstanding example of what you can do if you truly apply yourself. Some of the comments that I've heard here, which they may not be intended to denigrate Don's work, including the comment about parking being so far from the waterfront, are fundamentally misplaced. Though every issue that is part of the boat launch project has been vetted and re-vetted and re-vetted. If you look at that map in front of you, the picture, virtually the entire space to the left of the pier is off limits to the town. That's leased space. It's waterfront that is not available to be used by us. So the usable waterfront for us consists of the pier, and you can see the waterfront at the pier is essentially inaccessible because it's large riprap everywhere. So essentially that relegates us to the right-hand side of the pier, that small strip of sandy beach. You go down there in the summer, those of us on the committee tend to spend a whole lot of time down there. That is where everybody congregates. They are squeezed in that space by the building. As virtually everyone we've talked about said, if you were going to plan a field that was usable for the town as passive recreation space, you would never choose to put a building there. That's the space for shade and trees and picnic tables and maybe a pavilion. And there is additional parking on the field to address a separate point. Look around the room, include myself, most of those parking spaces, virtually all of them, are way up at the top. They're not accessible. The parking at the bottom is a valuable resource for handicapped, for kids, for all manner of people who don't have access for remote parking. We've identified, as part of the discovery process here, we've identified, and I think Don touched on this, multiple other places on the field that would be suitable for a recreational center, were that to be desirable. Honestly, a recreational center that's so far out on the peninsula on one side of town, yeah, it does happen to be my side of town, it's probably not even the ideal place to put it on the field. If we're truly interested in a community center, it would be more centralized, a la the fire station. But that's the proposal that's in front of you. I'm going to vote to tear that building down, and I think it's a no-brainer, but I've been involved in this for so long that I'm sick and tired of it. And any delay that occurs is simply going to be more money to the town when we eventually have to tear this down. Because we've seen it before. Fundraising on a hope and a prayer in this town is our sort of stock in trade for not doing anything, and eventually having to confront the fact that something does need to be done. Something does need to be done about this building, and the town benefits from that because it opens up that space to be used recreationally. For those of you who've been out to Eagle Island or at Muir Point, you've seen the toilet facilities there. They're fabulous. They don't require wells, they don't require ripping up the ground. They can be placed virtually anywhere that's accessible. So I can't condense the past few years of discussion about this adequately in this meeting, but I want to circle back and just say Don has done a fabulous job. There's literally not a rock that he hasn't turned over in trying to look at alternatives here, and it occurred to an overwhelming majority of us on the Mitchell Field Committee that this building should be torn down, and that is in the town's best interest. Thank you.
I just wanted to be brief about the town's figure of $230,000. We did rely on a consultant for that information. We got a report, the Beacon Environmental Report. It was funded by a grant from the state DEP to look at several buildings at Mitchell Field and to determine what hazardous materials were there, what it would cost to remove those hazardous materials. And in addition, we were provided with the cost to remove the administration building structure. So it was a range. For remediation, if we were going to demolish, the range was from $80,000 to $130,000 from our consultant. And for removing the structure, again, under the demolition option, the structure removal was $80,000 to $100,000. We used the high-end number for remediation of $130,000. We used the high-end for the removal of the structure, which was $100,000. That's how we came up with $230,000. We've also been informed by the Maine DEP that there would be up to $50,000 available to use. We would have to apply for it for grant funding for removal of hazardous materials. So that figure we have on a piece of paper. Someone may question it. Is it accurate? Is it not? But that's the basis of the town's figure.
Frank D'Agostino, Great Isle. My understanding is the boat launch was designed with that building being right where it is. So suddenly we're getting feedback that the boat launch isn't going to work because the building's there. Well, it's one or the other. I'm confused by that. The other thing I'd like to say is this warrant should be defeated because it's not giving the town all the options. We're debating whether or not to destroy the building or to rehab it. The warrant does not address the rehab at all. It's biased. So for that reason, whether you're for this building or against it, in the interest of fairness and full disclosure, and to give every citizen in this town a chance to vote yes or no on this, we should have a warrant or two warrants. And this was really to the selectmen at select meetings, and unfortunately we were ignored. So nothing's going to be delayed here. It's either yes or no on this warrant, and I think it should be no so that we can address all the options. The last thing I'd like to say is the parking. Again, the boat launch was designed, and if they didn't include the parking with that, that's why not? And as far as building new parking, if you look beyond the building, I see a lot of land there where large trucks and trailers and boats could be parked. So give this group a chance to raise the money. And we're not extending anything by doing that. As has been stated more than once, the remediation will take at least a year. During that year, this group will fundraise. We'll see where we're at. You can't take the building down for at least a year. So for that reason, I'm voting no on this, and I hope others will too, so that we can get a fair, clear, and concise couple of warrants to take into account all options of this building. Thank you.
The boat launch design includes the parking at the concrete pad. And it is not about the boat launch traffic and whether that will function because the building is there. It will. The reason we want to remove the building is because we're concerned about the other people who use Mitchell Field. The swimmers, the kayakers, the day hikers. The removal of the building facilitates a separate traffic pattern that ensures pedestrian safety so they don't have to interact with the trailer traffic. So I want to make sure everybody understands it. The boat launch will function whether the building's there or not there. It's what we're trying to do to enhance the recreational opportunities that people enjoy at the field now and provide A, a level of safety, and B, a smooth traffic flow. Because if we keep the building, then the cars come down. They're not going to be slicing through the boat launch traffic to try and get over someplace where they can turn around. The diagram on the side explains how to do that. So just want to make sure everybody understands the boat launch design, the traffic flow, that will function if the building's there. What we're trying to do is enhance the opportunity for people to enjoy the waterfront, the swimmers, the hikers, the picnickers. Thank you.
Those Bryce, Nick, I'd like to clarify one thing that Mr. D'Agostino referred to, parking within that red oval behind the admin building. That is the lower meadow, and there is so much wetland up there that we cannot develop it for parking. So it has been moved out. There is other parking available further away, but not immediately behind where the admin building is, except what's already there now.
I'm Beth Muldoon from Harpswell Neck. I grew up almost right across the street from this piece of property. And when I was growing up, there was the fuel depot there, which was, after its usefulness, the land was given back to the town. And we were given a gift of a beautiful piece of property that we have the opportunity, and nobody's spoken to this, of having this land remain as it was prior to the fuel depot being there. From an aesthetic point of view, which is how I'm looking at this, the building mars that aspect of the property. It is a gift, and the opportunity now is to move forward and bring it more back in line with its natural state of being. So I would vote to have the building removed so that we can all enjoy this beautiful place, to continue to have recreation there, swimming, kayaking, all of the outdoor walking, and without the mar of this building being there.
Philip Connor, still. This is a very complicated subject, and it's been made more complicated by the way it's worded on the warrant. So we have prepared a website, and we have a QR code which is available on a handout where you can come take a picture of this if you want to. But it pretty well, it does a good job of explaining it. A couple of points I want to hit before to clear up some things that have been said is the appearance of the building will change greatly with the plan that currently exists. It will turn it into a picnic area and a place for performances or for meetings, that sort of thing, and public restrooms, 24/7 public restrooms. Parking keeps coming up. I think this is a virus that's in the Mitchell Field Committee. The parking is a problem now because there isn't any except for the donut area. But Don has done a super job of, I think at the boat races, he parked 500 cars on Mitchell Field. Admittedly, that was fair weather parking, but it was 500 cars. And we have identified different sites where parking can be. So it's, again, it's not an issue. The location, where the building is now, is an excellent location to provide services for the boat launch people that are around there, restrooms and meeting rooms, or perhaps they need some management, I don't know. But anyway, it's right there at the very convenient to the boat launch, so it would be helpful for that. And it would be a great location for meetings or presentations and stuff like that to be down there near the water where it is now, to look out over the water and see. one thing that hadn't been made very clear here today is what we want to do by voting no is have the chance to finish our plan on the building and fund it with non-taxpayer funds. Don't know if there are any or enough generous people in Harpswell, but I think there are that will fund this to make it work. So it would not be a taxpayer thing. All these other things talk about, I don't know where the funds would come from there, but I don't think they're talking about doing a non-taxpayer thing. The delay is not an issue because it's going to be delayed by the very nature of what needs to be done. The building needs to be cleaned up before we can improve it or tear it down. So there's already going to be a delay. So please go to the QR code or go to the website and find out the details on this. And please consider voting no for this so that we have a chance to put up a really good asset for the town. Thank you.
Susan Ridge, Great Island. I'm voting to tear it down. The town has a history of delaying things and then having to get it up and paying extra costs. The building is not at a great place for the recreational development of the beach area. The people that come there want to be able to use the area. If it were a concert venue or something like that, other than where we have the bandstand, would it require year-round accessibility, extra costs? I doubt that it would be self-sustaining. I'm sure it would end up like the bandstand, back to the town after a few years. So if something were to be put there, I'd rather see it new and put further up near 123. I don't know what it will have as far as a traffic impact if we start to put something down there that's a major venue like Thompson's Point, like somebody mentioned. And I just don't think it's a good fit for right there by the water. And I'm voting against not tearing it down.
Dorothy Rosenberg, Harpswell, Base Point Road. This session turned out to be exactly what could be expected of it, which is that people who already had opinions, who already had a stance on what should be done with these questions, came, raised the issues that they thought were important, raised a number of other issues about cost, uses, whether or not planning had taken place or needed more planning to take place, and disagreed with one another civilly. This is exactly the conversation that should have taken place at town meeting. Harpswell is very proud of its history as a town meeting-based government.
I wouldn't get you.
The purpose of town meeting is for as many members of the population who can come together to hear these arguments, inform themselves, and make a decision. That is not what is happening here today. The people who came today are the people who already had a pretty clear idea of what they thought about these things. There are, I think, about 100 people here at most. Town meeting was closed because more than 420 people were in the room, more people were waiting in line. Those people came because they were interested either in this issue or another issue. The people who were not necessarily interested in this issue or that issue would have been informed about what we've come here today to discuss. They are not present, and they are not open to that information, and we do not have the opportunity. which is what town meeting is for, to be able to convince or not convince our fellow citizens of how we should act on issues which are fairly significant for the town and quite expensive as well. I think that we have failed to do what we really ought to be doing under the form of government that we have. These questions belong in front of town meeting. They don't belong on the ballot. For that reason, I would encourage people to vote no on both of these issues, because we need time and opportunity to gather more information, but in particular, to talk to our fellow citizens and allow that decision to be made democratically and after open debate. Thank you.
Amy Heibel, Lynette. I want to reiterate the comments that were made, not really comments, but the accolades that were given for Don Miskell. Mr. Miskell has served as an unpaid employee to this town for I don't even know how many years, and the work that he has done at Mitchell Field has been extraordinary. Mitchell Field is a gem. There is probably no other community in the state of Maine, I would say in the Northeast, that has the resource that we do with Mitchell Field. There's currently a group that is trying to take a look at Mitchell Field from a holistic standpoint. It was suggested with regard to the fire station that we should look at the holistic needs of the community with regards to fire and safety protection. And that is proposed to happen on Mitchell Field. I think what we have in some ways, I want to make one other correction. I believe it was Ms. Ott who said that the town has owned Mitchell Field for 45 years. That is not correct. I think she probably knows that. The federal government owned Mitchell Field for 45 years. The town, as Ms. Muldoon stated, was very fortunate to get it. What we have here is the nexus of a good idea with the wrong building in the wrong place. We do need and could benefit from a recreational facility in town that offers meeting space and bathroom space, but not in a building that really would cost more to renovate than to tear down and rebuild with something that is actually more up to date in terms of all the different things that we can do with our buildings now. Furthermore, a building in that location for community recreation should be someplace that everyone in the community can get to. And that is certainly not the case with the building in Mitchell Field. In addition, I'd like to just say, I'm reading from my notes here. So I think that the other thing is that there's been proposed things like wedding venues and meeting space and things like that. We have private operators that offer venues for wedding space, and I don't think that the town of Harpswell should be competing with those people. We should allow them to make their profit and do what they need to do there. Not that they wouldn't be charged to use Mitchell Field, but I do think we should not be confusing private commercial venues with public venues. So I guess that's about it. I think I would just reiterate also what Beth said. Because this facility, and I'm speaking about Mitchell Field, because the field is so beautiful, we should return it in every way that we can to its pre-U.S. government status. It's a phenomenal place for passive recreation. It's a phenomenal environmental asset, and it's a phenomenal place for commercial fishing and recreational beachgoers to enjoy the field at the same time. Let's keep it that way. Let's not try and put too much there and end up throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And let's not do this piecemeal. Let's look at the plan as a whole, look at the field as a whole, and come up with something that everyone can enjoy and that everyone can have a say in. Thank you. you very much. Last thing, these folks that are proposing this, I understand, and I don't disagree with their idea about recreation, but they have had a lot of time to come up with the money for this and plan for this, and it keeps getting extended and extended and extended. Let's get this thing done. I'd say vote yes, please.
Kathy D'Agostino, Great Island. We're not asking for the moon and the stars, and we didn't have a lot of time. All we're asking for is the year. And it's going to take a year getting permits, the remediation. By the time the remediation is moving forward, it will take at least a year. We're not saying don't take the building down. If we can't come up with the funding for this plan, take it down. But give us that year. And we weren't given that opportunity. And I think the plan is a beautiful plan. If you look at the webpage, it is so detailed. And we do need event space in town. You know, Harpswell's really spread out, but we are all one. And we all should take care of one another, not fight against each other. Well, because Harpswell can come over there, or Oily Island's just too far. It's not too far. They come to the concerts, and it's a beautiful spot. But if the concert's canceled because of rain, guess what? We can go here. So give it a chance. Look at it. Give us the year. That's all we're asking. We're just don't run and take it down. No. It's going to take a year before it can be taken down. So give us that time to come up with funding. And again, if we don't, then take it down. But at least look at the plans. There's a beautiful webpage, so give it a chance. Thank you.
I just want to commend the selectmen for putting it on the warrant. There will be more than people that were in this room. There were 60 at max. I just did a brief count and had some idea how many left. So I am glad with 4,700 voters that they all have the opportunity to either vote whichever way. So thank you for putting it on the warrant. I wish more stuff went on the warrant. So kudos to you.
Those prices aren't go next. The one final comment I would make, if everybody agrees it's going to take a year to get this building remediated so something can be done, then I'm going to suggest that the group that is interested in renovating it take that year and see if they can raise enough funds to recreate what they've got on their plan. I suggested perhaps $1 billion or whatever. And let us get on and get this building out of the way. They're still going to have to demolish all of the office space they have in the building and preserve the garage part for their closed-in pavilion. And then leave the slab, because that's what's going to remain no matter what we do. Years ago, when we had the water tower controversy, a group called the Friends of Mitchell Field, I think, trying to raise money to repurpose the water tower. And there was no viable way to do it, so the tower came down. This group wants to repurchase this building, which is in many regards an eyesore and an impediment to development. And I would like to see them take their energies and their interests, raise the money they need, and then with the public and private cooperation, recreate some of the things they're talking about somewhere else besides on the waterfront. And they've got a year to do it. Let's see if they can do that without any more extensions. Thank you.
Bob Pedrosian. Just to reiterate about costs. Bathrooms are part of this. They are the more expensive part of the actual renovations of the building. It actually is around $833 per square foot to take care of the new bathrooms that we proposed. And those would be fully functioning bathrooms. And the reason that cost is so high per square foot is based on needing to bring in water and septic to deal with that. Honestly, that should be a town approach since that's been asked for 20 years plus, but we are trying to offer that as a no-cost solution to the town so that there is a greater benefit to our community have that, then the renovations of the small meeting area and performance area actually come in at less than $270 a square foot. So this would be far cheaper to renovate than to build something new. I just want to make that clarification as a holistic overview of this site. Thank you very much.
Frank Casey on Great Island. The word extension came up. No one's looking for an extension of time. We're simply saying that in order to proceed with the removal of the toxic materials, it'll take at least a year to do that. What this group is asking for is to vote no on this warrant. And unfortunately, the remediation, this warrant's flawed. The remediation was tied to destruction of the building. Unfortunately for us, because we need to defeat this warrant for that reason. It's skewed, it's biased. No one's asking for an extension. Defeat the warrant, proceed with the remediation efforts. That will take at least a year. During that year, this group will either raise the money or they won't. No extension involved. Thank you.
Hi, Katie Neal, Harpswell. I just want to point out that to remediate the building, there are two different costs. One cost if you're tearing the building down, a different cost if you want to rehab the building. So it makes sense to have them separate, to have one clear warrant where we can say, are we saving the building, yes or no? And if the answer is no, then we move forward. If the answer is yes, then we can move forward as a community as well. So I think this is the clearest way for the voters to vote, rather than complicating it with several different line items that was previously proposed. Also, I'm hearing a lot of conversations around raising funding for building the beautiful building that was proposed. But as this gentleman over here talked about with the fire station, no conversation about ongoing costs. So great that we can do fundraising to build this building, but what about the inevitable ongoing costs that are going to be shouldered by the town and the taxpayers? Thank you so much for pointing to your QR code. Related to that, as it says in that plan, if I wanted to use the space, which would be a town building managed by a separate entity, I would have to rent that space to hold my pickleball classes or my yoga classes or any of the things that I wanted to do. So that funding model is based on all of the community groups renting the space back from them so that it can be sustained. There are currently spaces available at Harpswell Coastal Academy for office buildings. Please, somebody do something with that building and use it. That would be great as well. I have 2 cross-country meets happening at Mitchell Field this spring, which is very exciting. We're bringing 6 different towns together to have little kids run down the field. We had a beautiful kite flying event down there over the kids' spring break. And I am so grateful that it is an open, beautiful space that it, like Beth spoke to. It is special flying a kite down by the water, looking at Mount Washington. And I think we need to leave the waterfront as is. I'm very excited for a boat launch, and we can actually launch our boat and not get stuck in the mud as we sometimes do when we don't time the tide properly. So it doesn't seem to me like a space down at the waterfront, and that prime location makes sense. Also, I personally love being able to hold events across the town at the Cunny's Harbor Community Center, the Orr's Island Schoolhouse, and then whether it's at the Grange or it's at Centennial Hall or at the Scouts Hall, being able to be in the community in all of the different spaces, I think is super important as we are in a town that's spread out. So I just don't know that pushing forward this item for this admin building makes sense. I'm not against having a recreation center, would love to be part of that conversation. And I think it makes sense to consider Mitchell Field in a holistic perspective. Thank you.
Jeff Good, Horse Island. I'm actually, I guess, one of the few people who did not come with my decision made already, so I'm interested in the information. I've heard some talk about the remediation taking a year, and during that time, the fundraising could go on for the renovation of the structure. So if this item is defeated, will there be any remediation that happens in that intervening year, or will that simply press the hold button on all of the above?
The vote is to remediate and demolish, and if you vote no on that, then neither happens, and it's delayed until something else happens.
Okay, and the remediation, is it, are you removing materials that are in the building? So the building would have to be either renovated or destroyed to do that, or are there materials in the ground around the building?
It's the building. It's asbestos and toxic materials that need to be removed before it can be demolished.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? All right, at this point, we'll close this section of the hearing and move on to Harbor Waterfront Ordinance.
Hello, I'm Paul Porter, Town Harbor Master. I'll give you a little bit of background of what I turned over to a couple of committee members, work group members that are here. So over a year ago, the select board was approached by an outside entity that asked that the town consider bringing a moratorium on all aquaculture in town, in Harpswell waters. The board at that time decided to take a different approach and form a work group to address issues that may be happening, conflicts between working waterfront, recreational users, and all other activities that are just happening. So that group formed last April, and since then they've taken on the waters classification plan, which you see over here on the right-hand side and also on the screen. And what these do is these help guide committees and staff when reviewing anything, whether it be mooring activity, aquaculture placement, even wharfs that go in, proposed wharfs. We use this tool to help guide whether something's appropriate to go in a certain location as proposed. So I didn't want to jump into too much detail, but I want to give you the background of what this group has been tasked with. If there's a member that wants to speak to it, there's a couple in the room, I'll let them take over. Darcy?
Darcy did 90% of the work, so.
Yeah, so I missed the very beginning, but I was going to call and give the background to this. So everyone that kind of uses the water in these areas was involved in the work we did. And the biggest thing that we added was the commercial fishing activity, which hadn't really been documented in kind of a legacy way. So there was really no way for even state agencies like DMR to understand where fishing activity happened in Harpswell. So we thought that was an important item to add to the information around the waterfront in Harpswell. And that was kind of what took the most of our time, was adding that layer on, which is reflected over there. It's very complicated. Harpswell has an incredibly rich fishing community with a variety of different fisheries. So we kind of captured this pretty much, I think, as much info as we could from the actual fishermen. That's why it looks very busy. It's got a lot of layers for lobstering, scalloping, pokeing, European oysters. We've got seaweed harvesting in there, a couple of fish weirs. And then all the smaller dots around the edges are all of the existing moorings and wharfs that are in town. So you can see there's a lot going on in the waterfront, and that's why we thought it was pretty important to initial capture of what's happening in Harpswell, just to help maintain all the activities that are going on and hopefully plan better for the future so that everybody can keep doing what they're doing. Happy to answer any questions.
Bill J. Morris Island. I just am new to this. I just actually saw the warrant today, so I apologize if I'm asking questions that are documented somewhere else. So I understand one of the main things is the introduction of the fifth classification, legacy fishing areas. But I don't understand the definition of it. The wording in the definition in the class is very general and very vague. So is there and maybe the harbor master can answer or somebody on the committee can answer, how is it determined that an area is a legacy fishing area? Are there criteria? I understand that the select board would vote to change the classification. How does the recommendation get made to the select board? Because virtually that means 3 people or a majority of the 3 people can make a decision to classify or not. I'd like to understand better what is meant by legacy here, since the other 4 classifications seem to be quite broad and would cover it. I appreciate an explanation on that. Thanks.
So the information that we used to create these layers was actually something that took us the better part of the year to do. We reached out to all of the commercial fishermen in Harpswell. We had a series of at least 3 open houses essentially in different areas of town on Sundays to make sure that anyone who did fish for a living would have a chance to come in and participate. We also created, we basically started with gigantic wall-size maps like that and had the guys draw on their areas where they have to go fish and use color codes, just like you see the colors red for lobster, yellow for scalloping. We had those 3 meetings. We created little individual paper, regular size papers with a section of, there's 18 of them that cover the whole town, so that we could send those home to fishermen that didn't feel comfortable coming to a public setting or weren't available on the days that we had that. And then amongst us, the group that was involved is local people. Some of them have fishing family members or know people that fish, and we basically chased down the rest of everybody that we could think of and went to their kitchen table or their driveway and made them fill out where they fish on the map so that we could collect what we feel like is the most amount of information about the current fishing activity in Harpswell by the commercial licensed fishermen that live here. There's over 30 licensed fishermen who took part in mapping out these areas with input from others that chose to not write their names down. Fishermen are private critters that way. But we feel like we got a good representation of all of the areas that are currently fished in Harpswell from the fishermen who actually fish those areas. That's where this came from.
Amy Heibel and Nick, I just want to start off and say thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We can't protect what we don't know is there. And I just, as the chair of the planning board, we see all kinds of protections for land use and all kinds of classifications for land use. But what happens in the marine environment is equally as important. And not only that, but it's affected by what happens on land. And so to know where these important areas are gives us information that I think is critical for the town, for our heritage, and for those that will follow us. So thank you for doing that. And we look forward to hearing your updates. That said, I've got just a couple of de minimis suggestions for this document. One is this is recommended by the select board, and yet when we look at the actual language, the use of Board of Selectmen runs throughout. I think it's in 9 or 10 places. I would really suggest being consistent and more efficient, so I would suggest replacing, and more inclusive, replacing Board of Selectmen with the Select Board in all locations. And then in the last paragraph, change in classifications, it says, let's see. Okay, no, I'm sorry. I'm looking at section 3.2.1. I'll just have to read the whole thing. The classification of areas of the waters of Harpswell shall be recorded on a non-regulatory map of the town, herein after referred to as the Waters Classification Plan, prepared for the purpose of providing comprehensive water use data to help the public understand the nature and location of commercial fishing resources and other water uses within town waters, to guide the siting of new water-based activities so as to avoid conflicts with traditional uses, and 3, provide information to the harbor master, the committee, the select board, and I would add the planning board, which may be used in their discretion as part of blah, blah, blah. So I would add the planning board because we are so frequently asked to review projects and we have no clue what valuable resource might be in the waters off the land-based use that we are being asked to review and approve. So just would suggest adding that as well and then correcting or changing the language to select board. Thank you, and thanks again for your efforts.
I think those are good suggestions, but it's too late. The ballot's been printed. The staff did miss that Board of Selectmen reference. It's something we've been used to for a number of years, but we are moving towards select board, so that was something that was missed. In terms of planning board, I think that's a good suggestion, but there's not time to add that to this.
Thank you for that clarification. We are having growing pains in Harpswell, and having a public hearing on an item that can't be changed after the public hearing is quite frustrating for those of us who come. And the last thing I want to say is thank you again to all of you who sat up here and there and listened to us and who do all the work. There's no way you could have known that we were going to overrun the limits or exceed the capacity of this room. You did the best you could, and I really appreciate it.
Marianne Nave. I wanted to just talk to the process of how we got to these maps. As you know, I tend to film a lot of meetings and was able to be with the committee as they put the map together. There are new fisheries coming to town. We have a very, very large shoreline with very many fisheries, and it gets kind of hard to know what is being used and what isn't. And for a new fisher to try to get a license for something and try to pull together where might be a good position for it becomes very difficult. It becomes very expensive. What the fishermen have done here is put all the different fisheries together on this map. This is helpful for someone who's trying to get a good new aquaculture license. This is so great because it's a proactive way for not only the fishermen, but various places in town to know where's open space and where there isn't. I just wanted to make that comment because I think it's just a marvelous manner in which they proactively got ahead of something that could have become a bigger problem. Thank you.
Jeff Good, Horse Island. What impact would the designation of the legacy fishing areas have? mean, is it, I understand that it's going to provide more information that's useful. Will it have any impact in terms of restricting certain types of activities or encouraging other kinds of activities in those areas?
I think we should defer to the harbor master on that question. Currently, we have the 4 zones, and maybe you can talk about how you use that information when you receive mooring applications, aquaculture applications, that type of thing, and how adding that type 5 may help you and assist you.
So type 5 really came along because we had no information about where fishermen in Harpswell and surrounding communities fish in Harpswell waters. And one of the biggest drivers behind it was when reviewing aquaculture, the state, Maine Department of Marine Resources, makes any municipality justify a decision that you have towards that application. So if town staff and the committees review an application and they say, well, there's a lot of pogie fishing happening in that area, you can certainly say that, but the state, they want to see something that can quantify that. And when you have a document that has public input and you can physically show the state agencies something that the community has voted on or at least discussed publicly, previous administrations and staff at the state level have said that they will hold that on a high weight. They will use that when reviewing the application. So I guess what I'm trying to say is just because it's on the map doesn't mean that it's an end-all be-all. It doesn't mean that just because you propose a mooring or aquaculture in a pogie area that the town's going to say no, absolutely no way. It just means it needs a little bit more review, a little bit more scrutiny, maybe reach out to fishermen that we know participate in those fishing activities in those areas, and just kind of review it a little bit further. Does that help?
Larry Reynolds, Cummings Harbor. It's actually a follow-up to your question. With the use of the term legacy, are we implying that we're going to restrict some of these areas to what used to be the traditional scallop and lobstering, whereas in the very recent past we've seen the mussels and oysters, aquaculturing take off, and as we move into the future, there are probably other types of aquaculture or fishing biome growth that will be created and brought forth. Will use of the term legacy restrict or prevent that type of fishery from being created and brought into these waters? That would be my concern.
So ultimately, the Maine Department of Marine Resources, they have the ultimate jurisdiction over aquaculture in any municipal waters statewide. What this work group was trying to do was identify areas where fishing already occurs, and just to kind of go back to what I said before, it's not to exclude anybody from an area. It's just that the work group felt that it needed more review if it proposed anything was proposed to be in an area that had legacy fishing. And it's just something, again, to quantify to DMR that the community has come together and looked at this as a whole. And this work group consists of commercial fishermen, aquaculturists, landowners, shorefront property owners. So it's really the collective group that's kind of come to this conclusion, what you see over here from the maps. Does that help? Okay, great.
Bobby, who's investigating. I don't have a question, I have a comment to the select board. I think, and a friend raised this issue on the last topic, and he spoke to me. I think obviously certain issues that come before this town meeting need to be voted on, and we do that at the town meeting. I think a judgment is required, and I think, frankly, your judgment wasn't great on this one. I'm not saying we're going to try to undo it. It's been done, and you've done it, but I'm talking about the future. I think on issues such as the Mitchell Field, such as this one, right? The issues today, these are not simple little bond issues. They really aren't. They are issues that the community really cares about, and I think if we really keep the spirit of our town meeting government alive, we should not start relegating important issues off to a ballot where it's yes or no and no discussion. And the fact, look at how many people are left here now. So I hope in the future you will err more on the side of keeping discussion in the public meeting and not shoving it off to a vote. Thank you.
Nils Chan, North Island. Paul, thank you very much for the explanation. So I guess my question is, looking at the definition of legacy fishing areas or multi-purpose waters, what's the distinction actually? I asked what the distinction is between category 2 multi-purpose waters and 5 legacy.
That's a great question. So I think it was mostly, the work group just want to make it very clear. Fishing absolutely occurs in these areas. So it's not a, well, sometimes striper fishermen may come through and there's some recreational boating. It was a, this is where we know, in fact, lobster harvesting occurs, which we know is everywhere, but specifically the scalloping, bogies, they have really specific areas that they harvest in. I think to show, I keep going back to DMR, but to show DMR that a lot of work has gone into this, I think they want to make it very clear that Type 5 is what's very obvious commercial fishing or any type of fishing.
Hi, Jay McCray, Great Island. At the risk of being sappy, I wanted to thank the town for this committee, this work. I brag about Harpswell a lot. Having served in the legislature, I wanted to be on this working group to address efforts to undermine fisheries, really. And I think the select board held 2 workshops in response to this call for a moratorium, and then set up the working group. And I think Mary Ann, she said it very well. It was a very constructive process rather than a destructive process. It was getting so many different voices at the table. I'm not from a fishing family. I asked to be there because of the legislative experience and because I love Harpswell and support the culture and tradition of Harpswell. But because of the proactive town we live in, we came up with a very useful, constructive tool that will guide people. As Paul said, the Department of Marine Resources makes final decision on, for example, aquaculture leases. But the more information somebody has, if they're applying for a lease, it's a lot of money and a lot of time to apply. If you go through that process without enough information, you may find out later that if you had done this, it would have been better, but it's too late. You have to reapply, you have to spend more money and more time. So this is to educate, to support the fisheries we have, to support what's coming in the future. So thank you, Harpswell. I just wanted to add to that, the vote is to create this Type 5 water classification, but our intent is to be able to review where those fishing areas are every year. So if someone has an issue or concern, or a new fisherman comes to town, or someone moves away, we can make those changes at the town meeting every year. So it's meant to be a very public, transparent process. And once assuming the layer is added to officially the waters classification map, this will all be available on the town website for anybody to see. You can turn individual layers on or off. You can zoom in on areas. It should be very useful and helpful for anyone who wants to look at it once we've decided that it's something that you guys want to add.
I just want to be clear about the amending the map, the process. It does not require coming back to a town meeting. So the voters will be creating this new type 5 category. And then the work of the aquaculture task force, they've identified these areas. We will have to have a public hearing. The select board will have to ultimately approve the zones and where they are, or the types where they are. And in addition to the work that the aquaculture group did to create Zone 5 or Type 5, you also have a lot of recommendations to change some of the other areas. And I don't know if that's come up today. But again, that will be a process that the select board will be involved in, Harbor and Waterfront Committee, Aquaculture Task Force, and maybe the select board is going to ask for the planning board's input. It's not required in the ordinance, but that doesn't mean they can't ask for the planning board's input. So the map revisions can occur at the select board level after notice, public hearing, input from various committees.
Anybody else want to speak to this before we close the hearing? All right.
I just have a quick comment, Karen Tay, North Island. I didn't know anything about this before today, so I too was another person who came to learn today and come with an opinion. Just listening to the comments around this though, and the purpose that is information and to serve as a background for then which other decisions can be made. No decisions, this isn't an enforcement or anything. It feels to me like it could have been called commercial fishing, the zone. It's been legacy. Legacy implies to me something that is given, set. And for anyone coming in new that may want to use those waters, it says to me that that's something off limits because there's a legacy there. But I understand the purpose of it. I just think it would be a better named zone to be commercial fishing.
Anybody else before we close this hearing? Jim, minute to the mic.
Jim Hayes. I'd like to thank the committee for the work that they've done. It's a continuation of some work that started years ago, and I just didn't want to see it die on the shelf. Paul has done a great good job to pull that together, and the whole committee is working together. I appreciate the work completed. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Last chance before we close the hearing. And we want to thank everybody for sticking out. There are a few of you left for 2.5 hours, so thanks for being here. Then, we're